Okay, so let's get started. Today's topic is intent and intent filters. This is a companion topic to activities that we covered during last week webinar. So these are the topics. We'll take a look at the concept of intent messaging. Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so hopefully you can see the slide. My apology. So we are on slide 3. So we are going to cover the concept of intent messaging, and then we will look into intent object structure. It's basically Java object. So you will see fields that intent object contains, and then we are going to look into the role of each field of intent object. And then we will cover the concept of intent resolution. Is basically finding out the best qualified activity or broadcast receiver or service based on intent object. Okay, so moving on. So let's talk about the concept of intent messaging. By the way, I changed the slides a bit a couple of hours ago, and I've not posted this version to the web yet. So if you see a little bit of difference between these slides and the one that you might have, please get the new presentation from the website after this the webinar. So what is intent messaging? So first of all, we have covered so far the concept of activities. And activity is one of the 3 core components of Android application. So activities and services and broadcast receivers. These are 3 different types of core components. So whenever I use the term component, you can just regard it as an activity because that's the most common component, and that is pretty much what you are going to deal with. But there are other components called the services and broadcast receivers. So intent object is basically an object that is exchanged among these components. So if one activity wants to start another activity, that starting activity should create an intent object, and then it's going to call start activity, passing that intent object as an argument. That's something we have seen in our previous topic of activities. So typically, if one activity wants to leverage activities of another application, is going to create intent object and then start activity of another application. For example, if one application 1 wants to use photo display activity of another application, basically application 1 is supposed to, meaning activity in application 1 will create an intent object, and then it will send the intent object through start activity method. This is pretty important because on mobile platform you have a lot of, let's say, things, tasks, in the form of activities that are already provided or built by someone else. For example, photo display or display web browser, display a website. These are the activities that are commonly used by a lot of applications. So rather than creating your own activity for displaying photos or displaying a web page, you are highly likely to leverage the ones that are created by someone else. And in order to use those the activities of someone else, basically you are going to create an intent object and then send that intent object to the target activity. So next slide, slide number 6. So intent messaging, meaning sending and receiving intent object among the components, mostly among activities, is a facility for late runtime binding between components in the same or different application. So what do I mean by late runtime binding? By late runtime binding is, you don't really have to know the an activity when you're creating your application. When you need, for example, displaying photos feature, then basically you are going to specify that intention in a very abstract fashion, and that's called what is the the intent resolution. So you're going to basically say, I want photo displaying feature, and then you basically create an intent object, and during runtime, Android platform will select best qualified display web browser or display photo activities for you. And again, this is basically called intent resolution, and this intent resolution is happening during runtime. And we're going to talk about this concept of intent resolution in detail later on in this presentation. Okay, so that's the concept of intent. It's basically a message that is being exchanged among components. So the information that intent object contain can be categorized into two different types of information. One is information that is an interest to the target component, meaning target activity, for example. And the information could be that the information that is interest to the target component include actions to be taken and the data to act on. Okay, so we'll talk about this, the action and data fields in detail in a few minutes. It also contains information that is an interest to Android platform itself. For example, you can specify category of target components that should handle the intent. Okay, and some instructions on how to launch target activity. Okay, all right. So we'll talk about the concept of action field, data field, category field, and things like that in the following slide. Okay, so looking into intent object structure. So as I said before, intent is a class, Java class, and Java class that contains 6 fields. So it contains component name. So we are talking about target component name. For example, target activity class name. Action field, data field, category field, extras field, and flex field. Okay, so let's take a look at each of these fields and what kind of role each field plays. So we have seen example in our previous the hands-on lab of activities. You can specify name of your target component, typically an activity, in the component field. So component field contains the name of the component. For example, you can specify the name of the target activity I want to invoke is this. Okay, so I say com.javapassion.com.for target activity. Okay, so this is something that we worked on in our hands-on lab, in activities hands-on lab. Now, setting this particular field, component name, is optional. So if it is set, the intent object is delivered to an instance of designated class, meaning it will find, Android platform will find for target activity object instance, and then will pass intent object to that particular activity object instance. Now, if it is not set, then Android will use other information, for example, like action field or category field, to find best qualified or best suitable target component or target activity. And this is again called intent resolution. Okay, so what it means is that based on what is conveyed in intent object, it will try to find best suitable or best qualified target component. This is when the component name is not set. If the component name is set, then it will obviously try to find an object, meaning that activity object. If it is not set, then this intent resolution scheme kicks in. Okay, so that is component name field. Now action field. So action field contains a string, and it basically contains name of the action to be performed. So the starting activity will say, this is an action I want to be performed, and the Android platform comes with largest set of action action string values such as action call, action edit, action main, action sync, action battery low. There are almost 100. Actually, could be more than 100. The pre-built action, the action names. And you can also define your own action strings for activating the component in your application. So this action field is used during the intent resolution for selecting the best qualified an activity. Now, this action field largely determines how the rest of the intent fields are structured. For example, the data field and extra field will be determined based on what action was actually set. Okay, for example, just like the method name determines a set of arguments and the return value in Java. Okay, so data field is a URI of the data to be acted on and the MIME type of that data. So different actions, as we talked about in the previous slide, different actions are paired with different kinds of data specification. For example, if action field is set to action edit, that means you're basically asking an activity that can edit something, right? But you also have to provide the URI of the document to be displayed for editing. So in that case, you are going to specify URI of the document in the data field. Okay, so typically action field and data field are paired together to provide complete information. Another example is if you are using action call, so that means you're looking for an activity that can perform some kind of, let's say, the phone calling. In that case, the data field would contain a telephone number starting with a tel URI and the number to call. If it is action view, meaning you are looking for an activity that can display something, so in that case you might have the HTTP URI, the target URL, as for the page. So these are other examples of data and action and data pairs. So action view, you can also, so this is if you have action view in the action field, and then if you have a content and context people 1 in the data field, basically you are asking Android platform to find activity that can display information on this person number 1 in the content provider. So if you're using action dial and provide this string in the data field, basically you are asking Android platform to find an activity that can display the phone dialer with a person filled in. Okay, so the rest of the examples are somewhat obvious. For this is for the displaying the telephone number, and this is not only for displaying but also calling in. So an activity. So this is for looking for an activity that can display the phone number, and this is looking for an activity that can actually dial the number. And this is edit. So you are editing information about person number 1, and this is displaying list of the people. Okay, moving forward. So when matching an intent to a component that is capable of handling the data, it is open to know the type of the data. So this is, we are talking about intent resolution. We are going to cover in detail later on. So I'm going to just move on. For now, you can for now the concept of intent resolution is a scheme that is being used by the Android platform for selecting the best qualified activity based on 3 things, and again we're going to talk about that in detail: action, category, and data field. Okay, so this is what we are talking about. So data field is involved in intent resolution. So that's what we are going to. So we are going to cover this in detail later on. So we're going to just move on. Okay, so category field. Category field contains additional information of what kind of component, what kind of activity should be selected for handling your intent. Okay. Now you can have a multiple categories in your intent object. And Android platform provides a set of predefined categories. Again, we're going to take a look at those predefined categories in the following slide. And of course, you can define your own categories. So these are examples of predefined categories, like a category browsable. That means the target activity can be invoked within a browser to display data referenced by a link. So basically, the category is used in intent object to specify what kind of activities you're looking for. So as I said before, in intent object, the combination of the action and data type and data field and the category field will actually specify what is the best qualified activity that you're looking for. And Android platform will use information in the intent object to select one. Again, that's the concept of intent object. So these are basically predefined categories. Okay, and you can certainly define your own. Okay, so so categories, home and launcher. So we're going to actually talk about this one in a bit more detail later on. Okay, so for now on this slide, just just get the sense that there are the set of categories that are predefined, and we'll see how this category is used in intent resolution in a few minutes. Okay, so extra field is basically a set of key value pairs. Okay, so the example, if you are setting action time zone change in the action field, then extra field might contain the new time zone. Okay, for example, if you are setting action headset clock in the action field, the extras field might contain the name, the extra information indicating whether headset is now plugged in or unplugged. So this is mainly used for passing extra key value pairs. And the flex field also specifies some instruction on how Android system should launch an activity. Okay, so these are examples. For now we are going through these fields and just to get the sense of how these are actually used. But I haven't really explained how all these things are in fact used in detail. So if you don't understand what I'm talking about so far, that's perfectly fine. So we're going to get into the discussion of how these fields are in fact used together in the following slide. So that is intent resolution. So this is probably the most important concept in this presentation. So what is an intent resolution? As I said before, it is a scheme used by Android platform to determine which target component should be selected for handling the passed intent object. Okay, so again, typically we are talking about an activity, but it could be broadcast receiver or it could be a service. Now, types of intents. So there are two different types of intents from the perspective of intent resolution. The first type is explicit intent, and the second type is implicit intent. So what we have seen so far is explicit intent. Explicit intent is the one that contains the is component name filled with target class name. Okay. So, we have seen an example in our activities presentation and hands-on lab. So if you are calling a particular activity in your application, you specify this component name field with the target activity class, right? So that is, in that case, so you create the component name field of intent object, and then you are going to call start activity with an intent object. So in that case, that intent object is in the form of explicit intent because component name contains explicit target name. Okay. Now, implicit intent, on the other hand, does not name or target. So in that case, component name field is blank. Instead, you are going to use action and category and the data fields. Okay. So intent resolution for explicit intent is simple because you specifically specify what is the activity that needs to be the target activity, right? So you specify the name of the target in the component name field. So in that case, Android delivers the explicit intent to an instance of designated target class. Again, typically an activity, target activity. The rest of the intent object in this case are not used because it's going to use just the component name for determining which component should be the target. Okay. However, for implicit intent, which means there is no explicit target specified in the name field, now Android platform is going to find best qualified target component based on the again three things: the action field and the category field and data field of that intent object. Now, how does it? It's going to compare the contents of intent object. So again, we're talking about three fields. Okay, what are these three fields? This is a quiz for you guys. What are the three fields of intent object that are going to be used by Android platform for performing implicit intent resolution? Anybody? Action, category, and data fields. Okay. Now it's going to use those three fields of intent object passed to what is called intent filters. So what is an intent filter? Every component, meaning every activity on Android platform, is associated with an intent filter. Intent filter is basically, so let me actually move on. So these intent filters are actually specified in Android manifest XML5. Okay, so intent filters. So let's take a look at the concept of intent filters, and this is used for the implicit intent resolution. So what is an intent filter? Well, what are the intent filters? Filters describe and advertise capabilities of a target component. Okay, so basically informs the Android system what that particular component can handle. Now, if a component does not have any intent filters specified, meaning if an activity does not have any intent filters associated, then it can receive only explicit intent. A component that has filters can receive, of course, both explicit and implicit intents. A component, an activity, can have separate filters, meaning multiple filters for different job it can do. Okay, in fact, there is a note editor application that comes with the Android SDK package. So it has what is called the note editor activity in that application, and this activity has two filters: one for starting up with the specific node when the user can view or edit, that a user can view or edit, or another for starting with a view or blank node, with a blank node. Okay, so let's see an example of those. So this is Android manifest XML file of that particular application. Okay, so as we talked about in our previous presentation of activity, every activity needs to be specified in the manifest file. So we have this activity called node editor activity. Okay, so this is the name, and this is the theme, and this is the label. Now each activity can be associated with a set of intent filters. Okay, so in this example, this activity, node editor activity associated with the two intent filters, one and second intent filter. So each activity with intent filters is basically advertising the things it can do. So what in this case, this activity node edit activity is saying to the Android platform, I can handle view action, and I can handle edit action, and I can handle edit node action. Now I'm also belonging to a category called default, and this is also data type I can handle. Okay, so combination of this action and category is going to specify what this particular node editor can do. And it also has second filter. Again, this second filter is a combination of action, category, and data field. Again, this is indicating to the Android platform, I can perform insert action and under this category, and the data type I can handle is this. Okay, so this is the role of filter. Every action can have 0 or more intent filters, and it's basically advertising its capability. So just repeat this statement. Filters describe and advertise capabilities of a target component. Basically, it informs the system which implicit intents a component can handle. Meaning, when the calling activity sends an intent, these filters are compared against actions and categories and data fields of this intent. Okay, so when you start your application, what happens is that Android platform take a look at the manifest file of that application, and then it will maintain the capabilities of all the activities of that application by looking at intent filters. Okay, is that clear? Phil, I'll answer your question at the end of the presentation. Okay, so that is the concept of intent filters. Okay, so real intent resolution for implicit intents happens through the intent resolution, and intent resolution is basically comparing what you have in your intent object, what comes in the intent object against those capabilities of the activities that are maintained by the Android platform. Okay, so this is a bit of repeat. And implicit intent objects are tested against intent filters of target components in 3 areas: action, category, and data. Okay, so as I said before, all the activities that are installed on your Android platform have intent filters in the form of, again, action, category, and data. So when Android platform receive intent object from a calling activity, it will compare that intent object against all activities on the platform. Okay, in again these 3 fields, and that is basically for selecting the best qualified target component, and that is the concept of intent resolution. Okay, so in order to be delivered to the target component that owns the filter, it must pass all 3 tests. So this is the thing that Android platform perform as a process of intent resolution. It will try to find a target component that pass all these 3 tests. So it's going to compare action field, it will compare category field, it will compare data field. Now, if intent can pass the filters of more than one activity or service, meaning if there are more than one target component, for example, target activities that pass the test of all these 3 fields, then Android platform will display the list of them so that a user can select. Okay. Now, if there is no target, then there will be an exception. Okay, so it's gonna be target not found exception. Okay, so let's start with action test and category test and data test. So these are the three fields of intent object that are compared against the same things in the filters. Okay, so how does the action field of intent object is going to get compared against action in action filter in the activities on the platform? So in order to pass the action test, action field test, the action specified in the intent object must match one of the actions listed in the filter. Okay, so you have seen an example that an action can have action filter can have multiple actions, right? So, but intent object should have only one action field. Okay, so the action field value of your intent object will be compared against the actions in the filter, and it should be one of the actions in the filter. Okay, if there is none, then the test failed, meaning that activity is not qualified as a target activity. Okay, so if intent object or filter does not specify an action, these are what happens. So if the filter does not specify any action, and there is nothing for an intent to match, so in that case, all intent object fail the test. Okay, meaning it's going to result in the target activity not found or target component not found. Now, on the other hand, an intent object that doesn't specify, if the intent object is the one that doesn't specify action field, then any activity will qualify, meaning any activity will pass the test as long as the filter of that target activity contains at least one action. Okay? All right. That is action test. Now let's move on to category test. For an intent to pass the category test, every category in the intent object must match a category in the filter. Now, intent object can have multiple categories. Okay. Now, every category that is specified in intent object must match a category in the filter. Okay, meaning the categories of the filter should be a superset of the categories of intent object. Okay, meaning every category specified in the filter should have a matching category in the filter in order to pass the test. And of course, the filter can have additional categories. Okay, so that's the reason we say the filter is a superset of the categories of the categories of the filter should be the superset of categories of intent object in order to be qualified. Okay. Now there is a special case. An intent object with no category specified should always pass this test, right? Because there is, it's basically a subset of any target, right? Okay. So regardless what category is specified in the filter. Okay. Now there is a special case. Android treats all implicit intent passed to the start activity as if they contained at least one category called default. Okay. So even if you do not specify a category in your intent object, Android platform will add one for you, and that is category default. So what that means is the target activities that are willing to receive implicit intent, meaning target activities who want to handle that intent, must include Android intent category default in their intent filters. Okay, so what that means is that even if you have not specified a category in intent object, the filters of activity should contain this default category in their filters. Otherwise, it's not going to be qualified. Okay, all right. Okay, so we covered action test and we covered category test. Now the third field that will be used for intent resolution for implicit objects, implicit intent object, is data field. Okay, so this is an example of intent filter. So what it's saying is that I can handle this MIME type, and this is the scheme in the form of URI. Okay, where the data is supposed to come from. Okay, so there are two. Again, this is URI field, and this is the MIME type field, and both are used for intent resolution regarding data field. Okay, even though this MIME type is used only in most cases. Okay, so this is URI. So you have a scheme, and then you have a host, port, and path. So in this case, what it's saying is the scheme is content, and host is this, and port and the path is this. Okay. Now the what gets compared is the URI of intent object is going to get compared, the URI specification in a filter, only the things that are specified in intent object. Okay, so if intent object have only, let's say, scheme, then it will be compared only the scheme portion of the filter. So again, typically my media type is going to be more commonly used than URI. Okay, and you can obviously have a combination of MIME type and URI, but typically MIME type only is used. So you can specify, I can handle text type, I can handle audio type, and things like that. So in this case, if you're using star, basically we're talking about all audio type. So testing rules is actually pretty much the same. So intent object contains both URI and data type. Pass is the data type part of the test only if the type matches the type listed in the filter. So type must be matched. It passes URI part of the test either if its URI matches the URI in the filter, or if it has the content or file URI, the filter does not specify the URI. So I mean, it's just the rules. And for now, the data type is, I'm gonna let me just use this example. So basically, what I'm saying is that I, as a target component, can handle any intent object that has this MIME type. Okay, image MIME type. Okay, so this is the case that I have a combination of the scheme as well as the type, meaning I can handle any intent object that specifies this kind of type, and the scheme is HTTP, meaning data is coming from the network. Okay. All right. Now let's move on to special use cases, and I'd like to move on to hands-on lab. I'd like to spend at least 15 or 20 minutes on the hands-on lab. So special use cases. We have seen this example so far, right? And I was telling you, these 4 lines of code in your manifest file is basically saying that any activity with these 4 lines of the code in the manifest file is indicating that that is the starting activity. It's like a main class in Java, and that's basically what this is all about. So activities that can initiate, so the main action is, it is an activity that can start the application. So that is the filter. Okay, so activities that can initiate application have filters with this main specified as the action. So this is a way application gets started fresh without a reference to a particular data. So meaning, basically whenever you have this action for your activity, what you're saying is that I am the starting activity. Okay, I don't have to be called by any other activity. Actually, it is being called by the Android platform itself. Okay. Now, if you have a category of this launcher, what that means is that I'm the activity that belongs to a launcher category. What that means is that this is something that can be specified in the home screen as one of the application. Okay, so So this is actually a bit of repeat what I just talked about. So the Android system populates the application launcher, the top level screen that shows applications that are available for the user to launch by finding all activities with intent filters with these two. Well, actually, any activities that have this launcher category that can be launchable from the home screen. Okay, so any application that you see on your home screen that has all these icons and labels, that is an activity that has launcher category. Okay, and the action main is the one that is capable of being started. Okay, so combination of these main action and combination of this launcher category indicates that is an activity that can be started, and also it is something that you can see on the home screen and that could be launched by a user. Okay, now there is another category called category home. Okay, so category home is an activity that gets started when you turn on your Android device. Okay, meaning the home screen that you see, that is represented by an activity that has category home. So typically you will see just one activity that belongs to this home category. Okay, so in Android platform, as you can see, everything is in the form of an activity. Okay, in the form of component, and your home screen is in fact launched by an activity that belongs to this home category. Okay, all right, so that is the presentation. So let me move on to the hands-on lab. Okay, so exercise 1, we are going to exercise explicit intent. This is something that we exercise in activity hands-on lab as well. Okay, so and then we are going to display all activities that belong to a custom category. So in this exercise, we are going to create a custom category, and then we'll display them, and then we'll actually add these activities in that custom category through the filters, and then we are going to list them all. And then exercise 3 is we are going to list activities that belong to category home category. Okay, so quiz for you: how many activities do you typically find that belong to category home category? Anybody? Well, sorry about that. Just one. Good, excellent. Okay, so let's move on. The explicit intent is something that we have seen before, so I'm going to just move quickly. So when you run the application, this is your first activity. This is the starting activity, and in this case, in this application, we are displaying action field and category field, all category field. So these action field and category fields are in fact set by the Android platform because you are actually displaying your first activity that gets called. Okay, so it is set as an action, and the category set the launcher. So you see how it's basically performing the intent resolution to find your activity that can get started. Okay, so when you call activity 2 by clicking this button, then you're going to see second activity. So now we are displaying action field and category field, and both of them are null. Even if they actually set, it will not be used. Okay, they are not going to be used because we are doing explicit intent resolution, meaning Android platform will just see component name field. Okay, so let's take a look at the example. So you have activity 1, activity 2. So we have activity 1 that has this intent filter. Okay, and then activity 2 doesn't have it. So again, and intent filters are basically advertising the capabilities of this activity 1. And what it's saying is that I can handle action request that contains main, and I am belonging to this category. Okay, all right. And so this is a code. We are basically calling getIntent method. This is a method of the activity class, and I display action field, and I also display all categories field. Okay, and then when the button is clicked, I created explicit intent object by specifying the name of the class. So I'm actually, when you actually say intent, and then this context object, and the second parameter is used for setting the name field. You can actually create the new intent object without the second argument, and then you are going to be able to call intent.setName, and then you can specify this the target class name. Okay, so moving forward, so this is pretty straightforward. So let me just move on to exercise 2. So here I like to display the list of activities that belong to custom category. Okay, so this is the result. So in this case, we have 3 activities that belong to a custom category. Again, you're basically specifying the custom categories in the filters of each of these activities, and then we display them. Okay, all right, so let's see how we did. Again, we have 3 activities, and then we have another activity that displays that activities belong to a particular category. So we have 4 activities. This is a main activity. Okay, and then I have defined activity 1, and it can handle action, a main action, and then I have this category called my own category. Okay, so I'm saying that activity 1 belongs to my own category. Same thing with the activity 2, same thing with activity 3. Okay, now in the main application, main activity, basically what we said was you create intent object. As you can see, this is null. This is implicit intent resolution because we are not setting the target the activities class. Instead, we are just setting action field. Okay, and then I'm setting category field. Okay, and the category field I set is my own category. And then what I can do is there is utility class called a package manager. Okay, so from the context object you can get the package manager object, and then you can call query intent activities, and then you pass intent object, and it will return list of all activities that pass that intent resolution. Okay, so that's the reason it's going to display these 3 activities, because these 3 activities through intent resolution get qualified as an activity that can handle the intent object that I set. So again, the intent object I have is basically have which 2 fields I set for the intent object in this exercise. Anybody? What are the 2 fields I set in this intent object? So this is a code. I'm creating intent object. Good. Well, the Tom says the activity and category close. Action and category. Okay. So this is the action, and this is category. Okay. So there is actually add action method. So here we are setting it through the constructor, but you can create the null intent object, and then you can call add action, and then you can specify this action main. Okay. All right. Moving forward. So the modification for your exercise is that now I'm adding another category to 2 activities. Activity 1, activity 2 now have 2 categories. Okay, so while the third activity has only 1 still. Okay, so in this case, I'm creating intent object that contains 2 categories, my own category and my own category 2. So in this case, the activities that are qualified to handle the intent object is, how many are we supposed to be able to see? How many do we expect to see? We should see 2, right? Okay, because intent object now contains a 2, and the qualified target activity has to have a superset of these 2 categories. Okay, so that's the reason we are seeing only 2, because third one doesn't have the second category. Okay, exercise 3, we are trying to display all activities that belong to category home. Again, this is the case we are expecting to see just 1, because there is only 1 activity that displayed at home screen. Okay, so this is what you see. You see just 1 activity that belongs to category home. Okay, so the coding is pretty much the same. So this is our main class. So here what I'm saying is, again, we are creating implicit intent object. So the action is going to be action main, and the category in this intent object is category home, and then the rest of the code is the same. Okay, and here we are displaying them in the form of the list view, right? Okay, all right, so that's the reason you are seeing only 1. Now we are going to start. So this is a case that we are just displaying for our the testing. Exercise 4, now we are going to start it, okay, by calling what method? What is the method that we can call to start an activity? This is a quiz. Anybody? Good, start activity, excellent. Okay, so that's basically what it does. So when we are running this application, we are going to click this button, and it's basically going to start an activity with category home intent object. Okay, same intent object that we have seen in the exercise 3. Okay, so now you are going to see this screen. So this is an activity that displays the home screen. Okay, so code is pretty much the same, except now we are going to just call start activity. All right, okay, so very straightforward. Now we are going to display the list of activities that belong to category launcher. Okay, so the one exercise 3 and 4, we basically take a look at the activities that belong to category home. Now we are going to display activities that belong to category launcher. As I said before, any activity that belongs to category launcher is something that can be launched from the home screen. That is an activity that belongs to category launcher. You see the difference? Okay, so category launcher, if you want to have your activity to be launchable from the home screen, then you want to have the filter of that activity with category launcher. Now you should see a lot of activities that belongs to category launcher, because anything that you see in your home screen should belong to should belong to category launcher. Okay, so in fact, when you run the application, you see many. Okay, so each one, in fact, is representing. Each one is basically something that you see in your home screen. Okay, now the code is pretty much the same. So here we are creating intent object, again implicit intent object. This time we are going to set intent.category launcher, and then we are going to use package manager class to display it. Okay, all right, now exercise 6, now we are going to start it. Again, we are going to use start activity method. So if I click this button, it's going to start an activity that belongs to this category launcher. Now what you expect to see is choices. because there are so many. There are many activities that belong to the category launcher category. Android platform will display them in the choices like this, so you can select. Okay, all right. So again, code is pretty much the same. So we, create intent object, then we call start activity. All right, moving forward. All right, now here we are going to call custom activity through the implicit action. So the actions that we have used so far is the actions that are already defined in Android platform. Okay. Now here we are going to create our own custom action. So here, when I run this application, I am going to start activity 2A through my custom action. And if I click this one, it's going to call activity 2B with a custom action. And this is the action A, the activity that that handles the action A action field. Okay, so let's see the code. So we have 3 activities. This is a main activity, and then we have 2 target activities. One is called activity 2A, and the other one is activity 2B. Now you can see the first activity, activity 2A, has a capability through this intent filter. What it is saying is that I can handle any intent that has this action value set in the action field, and also I can handle default category. Okay, so this is my own custom action. Okay. Now, when in the main activity, basically I'm specifying action field. Okay, so you create an intent object, and then I'm calling set action. I'm using set action method, specifying my action string. Okay, so this is action A and action B. Okay, so depending on which button you click, then it will actually set the action field differently. And through the intent resolution, because there is only one action that has this action value set, it will call one of those 2. So in this particular example, it's almost like explicit the intent resolution, because there's only one. Okay, so let's move on. Exercise 8, as I said before, 3 major components on Android platform include activities and services and broadcast receivers. So we haven't really learned broadcast receivers, but you can think of broadcast receivers is a component that does nothing but receive and react some broadcast announcements. Examples of broadcast receivers are, broadcast receiver that received time zone change announcement and do something, or battery low, announcement. It will be running behind the scene in the background, and then whenever there is a battery is low, the intent object through the intent resolution that the broadcast receiver received that intent object, and it will do something. Okay, things like that. All right, so in this case, this is a main activity. So by clicking this button, it will send an intent object, intent message to broadcast receiver 1, and this is sending broadcast receiver 2. So in our case, in this example, our broadcast receiver is a very simple code that just receive the intent message and then just log, the display a log message. That's what it does. Nothing really significant. So we can see receiver 2A received the onReceive method. It received the intent object, and this is also received the intent object depending on the button. Okay, so this so if you don't see the log message, again you have to select the device. Okay, so code is pretty straightforward. The way that you are going to specify your broadcast receiver is using receiver element. Okay, and the rest of the description is the same. Again, basically what it's saying is that I am the receiver with these capabilities. Okay, which means that I can handle any intent object that contains action field set with this, and I belong to this category. Okay, so this is the main code. So instead of calling start activity, you are going to call send broadcast method. again passing intent object. Then it will try, then the Android platform through intent resolution will try to find a broadcast receiver that can handle this intent object. Okay, all right. So this is how you create broadcast receiver. So here, instead of extending activity class, you are going to extend broadcast receiver. And this onReceive method gets called, okay, when this receiver 2A is selected as a broadcast receiver that can handle that intent object. So in this case, we are just logging in. Okay, so this is the second broadcast receiver. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. Okay, exercise 9. As I said before, Android has a lot of built-in activities that you can leverage with. Okay, and this is the power of Android platform. You are not going to build a lot of, the activities in many cases, because a lot of activities already built for you through the Android, built and provided by the Android platform. So it has a lot of built-in activity. For example, display photos, display website, the call of telephone number and things like that. Okay, so those are provided in the form of activities by the Android platform, and those activities are already created and deployed on your Android platform. Okay, and this is actually pretty powerful. All right, so in this case, I want to display a web page. I want to send the email. I want to dial a number. I want to do some web search. I want to send SMS message. All the activities that can handle these things are already provided for you on Android platform, which means you don't have to create a single line of code, okay, to do these tasks. You are going to leverage activities that are already provided by Android platform. Only thing you have to do is basically specify the action field of intent object and send it to Android platform, and Android platform will do, through the intent resolution, will find the best qualified the activity that can do the job. Okay, so again, if you click this one, it will display a web page. If you click send the email, it will display this, the email, screen. Okay, and you can discard it. And dial a number, it will display an activity that can, let you, these numbers are pre-filled in, of course, in this case. Okay, and do web search, then you can do a web search. And then SMS message, you can do SMS message like this. So basically, there are built-in activities that can handle all these things. So if you take a look at the code, okay, basically this is web browsing, okay, and this is sending an email. So here I create intent object by setting action field with action view, and then I create a URI, and then you set the data field with it. This is a case I'm sending the text message. Okay, sending an email. So I'm using action send, and then I'm also setting the extra field and also set the type. Okay, for displaying the dial number is I'm using action dial, and then I provide information in the form of data, the number. So when I actually have this number, okay, as a set data, then the number is going to be pre-filled. Okay, if you skip this one, meaning if you don't set this number, then it's going to let you type the number. Okay, and this is web search, and this is SMS message. So there are a lot of activities that are already provided for you for doing a common tasks. Okay. All right, call activities using intent type. So this is the case that we are using data field. Okay, so here, when I try to get the music, okay, basically I'm going to, in this case, the creating intent object, just setting the type with action get content. This is a case that I'm actually using action get content action with setting the data field only. Okay, and because there are multiple choices, meaning what you're saying is that give me all the activities that can handle this data type. Okay, so here we have two different, let's say, the activities that can handle it. So it's going to actually let you choose. Okay, so that is the end of the presentation. So